I said stop resisting! Officer Brad Anderson's voice cuts through the crystal atrium of Westbridge Luxury Galleria, his face twisted with rage as he glares at the black woman standing calmly with shopping bags in her hands. You don't belong here. People like you come in here stealing, acting like you own the place. His finger jabs toward her accusingly. The woman continues speaking in that measured, professional tone. I have receipts for everything, officer. If you'll just look. Her voice remains steady, calm, like she's explaining a simple procedure. I said I don't care about your receipts. Anderson lunges forward, boots pounding marble floors. 30 phones start recording. She doesn't run, doesn't panic, just stands there with those shopping bags, watching him come. The slap echoes across 3 floors. Her head snaps sideways. Designer purses tumble from her hands. The crowd gasps in collective shock. Know your place, Anderson snarls. She touches her cheek slowly, deliberately. When she looks back up, her eyes have changed, from patient to predator. Something shifts in her stance. Her combat training kicks in. Anderson has no idea what's coming next. He has no idea who he just hit. Before we continue, please write in the comment section where you are watching from. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more interesting stories. Westbridge Luxury Galleria hums with wealth this Saturday afternoon. Outside, valets park Range Rovers and Teslas, while doormen in white gloves welcome shoppers into air-conditioned opulence. Inside, marble corridors echo with the click of expensive heels and the murmur of credit cards buying things most people only dream about. Stores like Gucci, Prada, and Louis Vuitton line the atrium, their windows displaying bags that cost more than monthly rent. The whole place radiates exclusivity, the unspoken message clear. This space is for a certain kind of person. Latasha Rhodes had earned the right to blend in. At 38, she was the youngest chief of surgery at Metropolitan General Hospital, a position she'd claimed after a decade of 16-hour shifts, groundbreaking research in trauma care, and a reputation for steadiness under pressure that made even the most senior attendings defer to her judgment. Before the surgical theater, there had been the actual theater, Helmand Province, where Captain Rhodes had earned a Navy Cross for extracting 4 wounded Marines under enemy fire, performing field amputations with nothing but a combat knife and morphine while rounds snapped overhead. She'd traded her uniform for scrubs, then scrubs for business casual on her rare days off. Today was one of those days, a Saturday afternoon, with no surgeries scheduled, no trauma calls expected, just a few hours to herself at Westbridge Galleria. She'd left her hospital ID badge at home deliberately. No credentials, no armor, just Latasha, browsing the new handbag collection at Gucci like any other woman with disposable income and a free afternoon. 3 stores down, Brad Anderson clocked in for his shift. 3rd-generation mall security. His grandfather had patrolled these halls when Westbridge first opened in 1982, back when security meant helping lost kids find their parents and escorting elderly shoppers to their cars. His father had carried on the tradition with pride. Brad wore the uniform like inherited royalty, the kind that came with a chip on his shoulder and a worldview frozen somewhere around 1985. He'd been a bully in high school, the kind who peaked at 17 and spent the next 2 decades resenting everyone who hadn't. The badge gave him what high school football never could: authority, control, the power to decide who belonged and who didn't. He was already irritated when he started his rounds. Too many "those people shopping here lately," he'd complained to his supervisor last week. Declining standards, he'd called it, his voice dripping with the kind of coded language that didn't need translation. Then he saw her. Latasha Rhodes, examining a leather tote near the Gucci display window, her posture relaxed, her clothing expensive but understated. Nothing suspicious, nothing wrong, except everything his instincts, trained by bias, sharpened by prejudice, told him was wrong about a black woman standing there. His hand moved to his radio. Anderson followed 3 steps behind, his boots echoing deliberately on the polished marble floors. Latasha felt him before she saw him, that prickling awareness honed in combat zones where being watched could mean being targeted. She caught his reflection in a store window. Khaki uniform, hand resting on his radio, eyes locked on her with the kind of focus that had nothing to do with actual security, and everything to do with assumptions. She'd seen that look before, in restaurants where hostesses suddenly couldn't find her reservation, at hospital fundraisers where donors mistook her for catering staff, in 1,000 small moments that reminded her that no amount of achievement could fully insulate her from other people's prejudices. His radio crackled. "Suspicious individual, possible shoplifter," he muttered, voice low, but not low enough. "Female, late 30s, moving through luxury retail. Keep eyes on." Latasha's jaw tightened, but she kept walking. She'd taken this day off to escape the pressure of the OR, the life and death decisions, the constant vigilance. She refused to let some rent-a-cop's paranoia ruin it. At Louis Vuitton, she spent 20 minutes selecting a wallet for her mother's birthday. Soft leather, classic monogram, the kind of gift that said, "I made it, and I want you to have something beautiful." She paid with her Amex Black card, waited for the associate to wrap it in signature packaging, and walked out with the bag hanging elegantly from her wrist. Anderson was waiting just outside the entrance. "Ma'am." His voice carried that inflated authority unique to men given just enough power to be dangerous. "I need to inspect your bags." Latasha stopped, turned, looked at him with the same clinical assessment she used on trauma patients in the ER, measuring vitals, calculating risk, determining the best course of action. "Of course," she said evenly, already reaching into her purse. She produced the receipt, crisp and time-stamped, and held it out. His face tightened. Embarrassment flickered across his features, brief, involuntary, before hardening into something uglier. "These receipts could be fake," he said, louder now, playing to the crowd beginning to form. "I need to see your credit card and ID." Smartphones emerged from pockets. A teenage girl aimed her camera. An elderly couple whispered to each other, frowning. Latasha felt the familiar weight settling over her, the exhausting calculus of being black in America, where cooperation could still get you arrested and resistance could get you killed. She stood perfectly still, receipts in hand, and waited. Latasha's hand was steady as she produced her credit card, the distinctive weight of the black Amex catching the overhead lights, and her driver's license. She held them out with the practiced patience of someone who'd learned long ago that anger, however justified, would only be used against her. Anderson snatched them from her hand, examining both with theatrical suspicion. His eyes moved between the cards and her face, squinting like a detective in a bad crime drama. The license was legitimate. The credit card was legitimate. Everything checked out. Except it didn't check out in his mind, because it couldn't check out. Not for someone who looked like her. "Dr. Latasha Rhodes," he read aloud, his voice dripping with mockery. He held the license up to the light, tilting it back and forth. "Right. and I'm the president." Someone in the growing crowd gasped. More phones appeared, cameras aimed and recording. Latasha felt the familiar tightness in her chest. The same feeling she got in the OR when a surgery started going sideways, when every second mattered, and panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. She forced herself to breathe slowly, deliberately. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor," she said, her voice quiet but clear. That was the moment Anderson's ego shattered. His face flushed red, the color spreading from his collar to his hairline. How dare she? How dare this woman, this suspect, question his authority, demand accountability, treat him like he was the one in the wrong? His hand shot out and clamped around her wrist. "You're not going anywhere until I verify this," he hissed, fingers digging into her skin with enough pressure to leave marks. The crowd reacted immediately. A woman with a stroller backed away, eyes wide. A teenager thrust his phone closer, making sure the frame captured everything. Another bystander, a white man in a business suit, shouted, "She showed you her receipts. What more do you want?" But Anderson didn't hear them. Or maybe he did, and that made it worse. His authority was being questioned. Publicly. By people who should have trusted his judgment, who should have understood that he knew better, that he could see things they couldn't. His grip tightened. Latasha looked down at his hand on her wrist, then back up at his face. Her expression didn't change, still calm, still controlled, but something shifted in her eyes, something cold and calculating, something that remembered Helmand Province. Latasha's voice cut through the noise with surgical precision. "Officer, you are assaulting me. Remove your hand." Not a request, a warning, the kind she gave in the OR when a resident was about to nick an artery. Clear, calm, final. Anderson heard only defiance. His grip released, but not in compliance. In preparation. His free hand came up fast, open-palmed, swinging in a wide arc fueled by wounded pride and racial contempt. The slap connected hard across her left cheek, the crack echoing through the corridor like a gunshot. "Know your place!" The crowd gasped. Someone screamed. Phones jerked upward, capturing everything. But Latasha was already moving. 3 seconds. That's all it took. Her training didn't ask permission. It didn't debate. Muscle memory forged in Quantico and honed in Helmand Province overrode conscious thought the instant his hand made contact. Second 1, her right arm shot up, intercepting his hand mid-recovery, trapping it against her shoulder in a classic combat block. Second 2, her left palm drove straight into his solar plexus, not wild, not vengeful, but measured and devastating. All the air exploded from Anderson's lungs in a single whoosh. His eyes went wide with shock, his mouth forming a silent. Second 3, as he doubled forward, gasping, her elbow came up in a tight arc, catching him square under the jaw with the dense bone of her forearm. The sound was sickening, bone on bone, hard and final. Anderson's eyes rolled back, showing white. His knees buckled. He collapsed onto the polished marble floor like a puppet with cut strings, unconscious before his head bounced once against the stone. Silence. Absolute, cathedral silence. Then chaos erupted. A woman screamed. Others scrambled backward. Mall security came running, their radios squawking static and urgent codes. Latasha stood perfectly still above Anderson's prone body, her breathing steady, deep inhale through the nose, slow exhale through the mouth, the same rhythm she used before making the first incision. Her shopping bags still hung from her left wrist. Her right hand, The one that had just ended the confrontation lowered slowly to her side. She didn't run, didn't kneel, didn't panic. 50 cell phones had captured everything. The slap, the self-defense, the collapse. The evidence was already uploading to cloud servers, being shared across platforms, going viral in real time. Latasha looked directly at the nearest camera. "I defended myself within the bounds of the law," she said clearly. Then she waited for the police. The video went nuclear before dawn. By 6 a.m., Luxury Mall Knockout was trending in 47 countries. The clip had been remixed, memed, set to gospel music and hip-hop beats. Black Twitter exploded with celebration. Finally, someone had fought back and won. By noon, the counterattack began. Westbridge Galleria's legal team huddled with their insurance carriers, running numbers on the potential lawsuit. A security guard assaulted by a customer, even one who had been manhandled first, opened them to liability they couldn't stomach. The directive came down from corporate. Control the narrative. Protect the brand. District Attorney Karen Mitchell received the file at 2 p.m. Her chief of staff laid out the politics with brutal clarity. She was 12 points down in the polls, and the Police Benevolent Association, which included private security unions, hadn't endorsed her yet. They were waiting to see if she'd stand with law enforcement or with the mob. The press conference was scheduled for 5 p.m., perfectly timed for the evening news cycle. Mitchell stood at the podium, her expression grave. "Today, we are filing felony charges of aggravated assault and battery against Dr. Latasha Rhodes. Ms. Rhodes, a trained military combatant, used excessive and disproportionate force against a security officer who was attempting to maintain order in a chaotic situation." She paused, letting the words sink in. This was not self-defense. This was a trained fighter deploying military tactics against a civilian employee doing his job. The reporters erupted with questions. Mitchell pointed to one. "Isn't it true the guard grabbed her first?" "Mr. Anderson was attempting to escort an unruly customer from the premises," Mitchell replied smoothly. "Ms. Rhodes escalated the situation with violence that could have been fatal." By 7 p.m., Officer Brad Anderson appeared on 3 major networks. The neck brace looked professional grade. His speech had developed a careful slur, just noticeable enough. His lawyer sat beside him, nodding gravely at intervals. "I was just doing my job," Anderson said, his voice carrying a tremor. "When she attacked me, I feared for my life. I have a wife, 2 kids. She could have killed me with those combat moves." He touched the neck brace gently. "I may never fully recover." The hosts murmured sympathetically. America watched a victim tell his story. By midnight, the hero had become the villain. The public defender assigned to Latasha's case was competent, even sympathetic. But when he laid out the plea deals, simple assault, probation, surrender of her medical license for 2 years, Latasha's jaw set in a way her Marine platoon would have recognized. "No. Dr. Rhodes, they're offering you a way out. The felony charge could mean—" "I said no." She leaned forward. "I'm representing myself." The lawyer blinked. That's not advisable. Neither is letting them rewrite what happened in that mall." She met his eyes. "They want to make an example of me? Fine. I'll make one of them." Within 24 hours, she'd filed notice of self-representation and subpoenaed Westbridge Galleria's employment records going back 5 years. The trial opened to a packed courtroom and live television coverage. D.A. Mitchell moved through her opening statement like a conductor, each gesture precise, each word calculated. The viral video played on the screen, once, twice, 3 times. The impact of Latasha's elbow against Anderson's jaw in crisp, high definition. Dr. Rhodes is a trained military combatant, Mitchell told the jury. She served in combat zones. She knows how to neutralize threats efficiently and lethally. What you see in this video, is not self-defense. It's disproportionate revenge deployed by someone who knew exactly how much damage she could inflict. She paused, letting the freeze frame of Anderson crumpling hang in the air. She turned a retail dispute into an assault that could have killed a man. The jury watched, rapt. 2 of them were nodding. When Latasha rose to cross-examine Brad Anderson 3 days later, the temperature in the courtroom seemed to drop. She stood at the defense table, a slim folder in her hands, and studied him for a long moment. "Officer Anderson, how long have you worked at Westbridge Galleria?" 7 years. His voice still carried that careful slur. "And in those 7 years, how many shoppers have you detained or escorted from the premises?" His lawyer objected. Latasha pivoted smoothly. Producing Anderson's personnel file. 17 complaints from black customers, every single one dismissed by mall management as unfounded or customer misunderstanding. Then she played his body cam footage. Incident after incident. Black teenagers followed through the food court. A black woman stopped while white shoppers streamed past. An elderly black man questioned about a purchase he'd made 30 minutes earlier. The pattern was undeniable. "You stop black customers at 12 times the rate of white customers," Latasha said quietly. "Don't you, Officer Anderson?" When Latasha took the stand in her own defense, the courtroom stilled. She'd dressed deliberately. Navy blue blazer, simple white blouse. Her posture parade ground straight. She looked like what she was, a decorated Marine, a surgeon who'd held human lives in her hands. D.A. Mitchell had expected emotion, tears perhaps, righteous anger. Instead, Latasha's voice was clinical, precise. "In the Marine Corps, we're trained in proportional force doctrine," she began. "Assess the threat level. Neutralize it with the minimum necessary action. Ensure your own safety. In that order." She walked the jury through it methodically. Anderson outweighed her by 70 pounds. He wore a uniform that gave him institutional authority. He'd already committed battery by slapping her, establishing that he was willing to use violence. "I had approximately 2 to 3 seconds to make a decision," she continued. "He was moving toward me again. His body language indicated escalation, not de-escalation. I had 3 options: run and risk being tackled from behind, wait and risk being struck again, or neutralize the threat immediately." A juror leaned forward. "I chose option 3, 1 strike, precise and controlled, designed to incapacitate without permanent injury. My training taught me how to do that. The blow I delivered was sufficient to stop the threat and nothing more." Mitchell objected twice during the testimony. Both times, the judge overruled her. Then Latasha turned to face the jury directly. 12 faces, 7 women, 5 men, representing a cross-section of the city that had watched this story unfold. "I did not strike him because I was angry," she said, her voice dropping to something quieter but no less powerful. "I struck him because I had seconds to protect myself from a man who had already shown he was willing to use violence against me. My training taught me how to survive and defend myself." She paused, letting that sink in. "And my experience as a black woman taught me that if I didn't act, no one would believe me anyway." The silence that followed was profound. The jury deliberated for 1 hour and 43 minutes. When they filed back in, Latasha stood, her spine straight, her hands steady at her sides. The foreperson, a middle-aged black woman who worked as an elementary school teacher, rose with the verdict slip. We find the defendant, LaTosha Rhodes, not guilty on all charges. The courtroom erupted. The courtroom erupted the moment the verdict was read. Cheers, tears, embraces between strangers who'd waited hours for seats. Outside, the crowd that had gathered since dawn broke into spontaneous celebration. Car horns blaring, people dancing in the street. Signs held high, "Justice for LaTosha. We believe her. Black women defend themselves." Within 24 hours, Brad Anderson was terminated. Westbridge Galleria's corporate office released a terse statement citing conduct inconsistent with company values. His security license was suspended pending review. DA Karen Mitchell's re-election campaign collapsed within a week. The Police Benevolent Association, reading the public sentiment, quietly withdrew their pending endorsement. Her opponent ran ads featuring her press conference alongside LaTosha's testimony. The contrast was devastating. Quietly, almost shamefacedly, Mitchell's office opened a civil rights investigation into Anderson's pattern of conduct. Federal prosecutors followed with charges of deprivation of rights under color of law. The 17 buried complaints became Exhibits A through Q. The settlement came 6 weeks later. Westbridge Galleria agreed to an undisclosed sum. Rumors put it north of 8 figures, and something more valuable: systemic change. The Rhodes Protocol, as it became known, mandated comprehensive bias training for all security personnel, independent quarterly reviews of all security stops with demographic data tracked and published, and immediate termination for any officer showing statistical disparities above established thresholds. Within 3 months, 47 major retail chains had adopted similar policies. The economics were simple. The cost of implementation was nothing compared to the cost of another viral incident. LaTosha returned to Metropolitan General Hospital 3 weeks after the verdict. Her colleagues gave her a standing ovation when she entered the surgical wing. She waved them off, embarrassed, and went back to work. A double bypass that afternoon, steady hands saving a life. But the case had momentum beyond her control. Legal briefs cited Rhodes v. State in self-defense arguments nationwide. Law schools added it to criminal procedure curricula. Civil rights organizations used the trial transcript in training materials. 18 months later, Representative Jamal Carter of Georgia stood on the House floor, holding up a photograph of LaTosha in her marine dress blues. "The Retail Accountability and Transparency Act," he announced, "requires all private security forces to undergo the same bias training and oversight as public law enforcement. We call this the Rhodes Standard." The bill passed 287 to 148. One woman's 2 seconds of decision had rewritten the rules. Chapter 9. A lesson 1 year after the slap, heard around the world, LaTosha stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., addressing 3,000 people gathered for the first National Dignity in Defense Day. She'd resisted giving the keynote. "I'm a surgeon, not a speaker," she'd told the organizers, but they'd insisted. Her story had become larger than herself. She didn't speak with triumph. Her voice carried the same measured precision it had in the courtroom, in the operating room, in every space where lives hung in the balance. "Officer Anderson made a choice that day," she began. "He chose to see a threat where there was none. He chose violence where there was peace, and he chose to assume he knew who he was dealing with based on nothing more than the color of my skin." The audience was silent, rapt. His assumption cost him everything: his job, his reputation, his freedom eventually. She paused. "Let that be the lesson. Respect is not optional. Dignity is not negotiable. and underestimating someone based on the color of their skin is the most expensive mistake you can make. The applause was thunderous, but Latasha simply nodded and stepped away from the microphone. She'd said what needed saying, nothing more, nothing less. The viral video, 10 million views and counting, had been dissected in law schools from Harvard to Stanford. Anderson's collapse, frame by frame, became a study in consequences. Latasha's statement immediately after, delivered to the cameras with surgical composure, "I defended myself within the bounds of the law," was quoted in legal briefs, taught in self-defense courses, analyzed in implicit bias training. The case became shorthand. Rhodes meant standing your ground. Rhodes meant preparation, meeting opportunity. Rhodes meant that the arc of justice sometimes bends in 2 seconds flat. Latasha returned to Metropolitan General, to the operating theater where she'd always been most comfortable. Youngest chief of surgery in the hospital's history. Her legacy wasn't the knockout, though that would follow her forever, but the principle it defended, that justice requires both the law and the courage to stand for it, even when standing means fighting back. On the marble floor of Westbridge Galleria, near the Louis Vuitton store where it all began, a small bronze plaque was installed 6 months after the settlement. Mall management had resisted, then capitulated under public pressure. It read simply, "In recognition of the pursuit of dignity and justice, may all who enter be seen for who they are, not who we assume them to be." Shoppers walked past it daily. Some stopped to read. Some took pictures. Some understood.